Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you're here, you must be here to talk about books because that's why I'm here, to talk about books. In today's video, I am going to be doing my weekly wrap-up because I was so busy, I totally forgot to do vlogs for this week. It's just something that completely slipped my mind. And I feel bad because usually I put a lot of effort into my vlogs. By the time I realized that I had dropped the ball on the vlogs, I was just like, okay, there's no point in doing these because I blew through 4 books this week. All 4 were fantastic reads and I adored them so much. But I also went off track and didn't read any of the books on my TBR 10. As you guys have seen, I have been very frustrated with my reading, and so I needed to pick up some books that were going to reignite my love of reading and reignite my passion for the books that are coming up on my TBR, and really tackle some things that I've been wanting to get to. This is because, you know, I've been bogged down in character-driven books, and I like character-driven books, but I was just hitting a slump that I needed to force my way out of. So the 4 books that I'm going to be talking about have nothing to do with my TBR 10. This is just going to be a weekly wrap-up of the books that I read. The first book that I read was The Holo Places by T. Kingfisher, and oh my gosh, I loved this book so much. So much. I love the breaking of the fourth wall and in any type of book. And so when that occurs, it almost is a guarantee that I'm going to love the book. The writing style of this book is so fantastic and fun, and I was not expecting that from a horror novel. This is my first T. Kingfisher, so I'm definitely going to be picking up more books by them, and this book was so unexpected on so many levels, which is why I gave it a 5-star. The main character, Kara, she is newly divorced and her life is in a downward spiral. She moves back home and she has a very tense relationship with her mother, so she moves in with her uncle who curates this museum of oddities. And in this museum of oddities, there is a thing, an object, that is delivered to the museum that has mystical, magical powers and starts this journey that Kara goes through in this novel of discovering a parallel realm, and it is a realm of horrors. Oh, it is so good. It is so good. The horror of this book is not always scary. It is more, I'm lost. I'm never going to get back to the place that I thought I was supposed to be in many different aspects, you know, as far as her life goes and the story itself. And I really loved the parallels of this dark place that she falls into and the life that she is currently leading. The book is just brilliantly written, and there are so many aspects of it that I adored outside of the writing style, but many of them are spoilery, so I don't want to really get into that. But many of the horror elements are really, really well done. There is some body horror in this, so if that grosses you out, you might want to avoid this one. But other than that, I would recommend this to any reader because it's cheeky in a lot of ways. And I think that makes the horror more palatable. However, if you like Grady Hendrix, you might also like T. Kingfisher because very similar, very, very similar in writing styles. But highly, highly recommend this one and can't wait to pick up more from T. Kingfisher. And I finally read Nofeck Gloss by Essa Hansen. Now this is a chonker novel that I finished in 2 days. Oh, it was so good. So good. Now, this book is very twisty and turny, and so many of the elements of the book are very, very complex. And so normally I wouldn't like that in a sci-fi novel because I get lost in it. When the science gets really scientific, very explanatory, I kind of have a tendency to be pulled out of the book. And that is one of the reasons I haven't read a lot of sci-fi. I am tackling a lot more sci-fi this year, but I really liked a lot of the elements of this book. And we are introduced to our main character, Caden, as a very young boy. And his planet gets pretty much destroyed. The people are kind of fed to these Nofeck Gloss creatures, Nofecks. And it's really disturbing opening. And he ends up being able to hide and escape in a long lost ship. And this ship protects him. And then these people who are trying to fight the slavers, which he was a slave, and his family, they were slaves as well. They find him, and basically there are some very odd rules in this society where finders keepers is a thing. And so since Caden has found this ship, it is now his. And the people who have found him are needing a way off the planet, and they ask him, "Can we borrow your ship?" And he's kind of like, it's not my ship. I just kind of found it, but okay. And they're like, okay, well, rules of the world, rules of the universe are finders keepers. It's now yours. We just need your permission to take it. And so he goes on this adventure with these people, and they start to explain some of the things that are going on in this world that he's not aware of because he was a slave. And some of the elements are a little convoluted, I will say that. But one of the things that they do and they teach him is that people have the ability to progress in years should they choose so. So our 11-year-old becomes a 20-year-old kind of overnight. And this is due to the fact that society has now progressed in a way where they can implant knowledge into your brain and build your body up to become physically 20 years old from an 11-year-old. And they're due to science. That's one of the things that they can do. And they do this because people coming out of these slaving societies pretty much have no other options. And they take Caden to one of these facilities and they do this. And after all of that is said and done, Caden really, really wants revenge on the slavers who have taken over his planet. And they have taken over his planet because of the Nofecks. The Nofecks have what they call Nophek Gloss in their brains, which he does now hold a piece of because he was able to take down a Nofeck and dig it out of its brain. He had no idea what it was, but this has now become his source of wealth. And it is something used to power engines and things like that. Anyway, all of this to say, this book is really, really complex and takes a lot of twists and turns that I just didn't see coming, and made this book very, very original in its own right. Just a very fun and interesting book to read. Now, I did end up giving this book 4 stars, even though I liked it so much, because a lot of it seemed very convoluted, and I can't say that any of it felt Deus Ex Machina. Like, I don't think it was that. Plot conveniences did occur a couple of times, but I felt like most of the elements that were delivered were very organic to the story and the world that they currently lived in. So it wasn't all that convoluted to me. And maybe it's just that I'm a baby sci-fi reader. I'm not sure. But I still really, really enjoyed the book and gave it 4 stars. I think it is definitely well worth the read. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe the second book of the Graven series is going to be coming out very, very soon. And it is called Azura Ghost. So be on the lookout for that. Now for the third book that I read, that would be the 4th and final book in the Ember and the Ashes quartet, A Sky Beyond the Storm. This conclusion was so good. All of the elements that had been presented in the first 3 books was very well laid out for the conclusion of the 4th and final book. Sabaa Tahir has created a young adult series that I feel everyone should try, because I don't want to say that this is the epitome of good writing, but it kind of is. And when you talk about things such as foreshadowing, prophecies, things like that, things of that nature, it is very difficult to create something original. But I do think Sabaa Tahir has done that. And the way the book concludes is very, very satisfying. There is a moment with one of the most hated characters of this entire series that culminates into something quite beautiful at the end. And I was mind blown by that particular aspect of the book. I was not prepared for it. And I might have teared up just a little bit, because I was like, oh my gosh, the way that ended. Was not anticipating that. And I also feel like in order to have a satisfying conclusion, there has to be moments where you really think the characters might fail. And this did deliver on that aspect as well. And Laia and Elias, their story concludes in a very satisfying way as well, which was kind of up for debate in the last book, the book previous to this one. But you really see all of the threads that Sabaa Tahir has created come together to create exactly what the prophecy has said. And even though you feel like they're so far out of their elements at this point, there's no way they can get back to this prophecy, it really, really combines to, like I said, create a very, very satisfying conclusion. I do want to point out that yes, 3 of these were audiobooks for me, but I had a very, very hard time picking up physical books because I was so busy. So while I was out and about, I was listening to books, and I kind of made audiobooks my priority because I knew I was going to be so busy and had so many things going on. And that's probably why I finished 4 as opposed to, 2 or 3 of what I usually do. And I really focused on books that had a heavy plot in the telling of the story. While Nofeck Gloss is pretty character driven, there is a lot of plot to glom onto in that book as well. So the next book that I picked up on a whim because of a certain trope. And the way people talk about it, I really was interested to formulate my own opinion on the book because let's just get to the point. I really like enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers is something that I can really, really appreciate because I think strong feelings are strong feelings. And whenever you have enemies to lovers, I think that plays on all elements of how people can feel so strongly about other people. And while I don't necessarily think it is the best way to go about living your life in a story setting, I do think that it is really interesting to read. And why I feel like shipping Elena and the Darkling is not a bad thing. It's a really great way to explore emotion. And I feel the same way in fan fiction. So let's just get to the book. Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Now, I have heard people love this book. I have heard people hate this book. Apparently on Goodreads, people love this book because it comes in at a 4.06. I didn't rate it quite that high. I gave it a 3-star. And my 3-star rating is, I liked it. I don't know if I have explained that a 3-star for me means I liked it. It had flaws, but I liked it. And the romance of this book is what people have the most problems with. I think that's valid and fair because while this is a true enemies to lovers, there are certain aspects of this book that are just, how do I say this? Really in your face. And very, very disturbing. And part of that is that this has very heavy religious themes. Christian-based heavy religious themes. And they are extreme. So you have the zealots of the Christian faith, pretty much, that's what we're dealing with in this book. And it can be very crass, very harsh, and I had issues with that aspect of it as well because many, many, many times religious zealots give their faith a bad name, and this is very apparent in this book. And it was overdone, over the top, and like quite horrible. And not that it was horribly written, but the way it was presented was pretty horrible. And we are dealing with a witch and a witch hunter as the main characters of this book. And so very, very many of the elements of Christianity were to the extremes in this novel. So the religious aspect of this being that women are property and they are to be treated as such, and if hitting your women, that's fine. Raping your women, that's fine, because they belong to you. And so while the main character, Reed, does not quite feel this way. There are many of his sect that do. And him trying to join his beliefs with the beliefs of his sect, his faction of society, you know, it gets a little dramatic at times. And I don't know. It was one of those things that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I am almost intrigued enough to pick up the second book, but with those aspects in mind, I kind of want to know what's going to happen to Reed after the ending of this particular book, but I'm not intrigued enough to add it to my TBR for next month, or, you know, eagerly push the button on my phone that says borrow. But I do think that there are a lot of flaws in this book, and I do think that there are a lot of things people are not going to like about this book. However, all of that being said, I liked it. It was a fun time for the time that I read it, and I just think that it's one of those books that's not going to stick with me, but I enjoyed it while I read it. It had flaws. So that is where I ended my week. And I am reading The Kiss of Deception by Mary Pearson. That is the other book that I picked up this week, borrowed from the library, and I am enjoying that so far. I'm not very far into it, but I've heard The Remnant Chronicles is a great young adult series. But again, I picked up these books because I knew that they had a lot of plot, and I needed to pull myself out of my character-driven reading slump. And I do hope to get back to my TBR 10 for this month. However, it does look like the final book to be added to my April reading will be Ruin by John Gwen, because the rest of the books, while I am eager to read them, I'm not eager to pick up another character-driven novel for a little while. And I think getting through my May TBR is going to be the thing that pushes me out of this current reading slump and gets me refocused back on the books that are on this month's TBR that I did not get to. That is it for today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!